Sebastian, Dane, Adrian, and a squadron of human coalition warplanes circled a towering mega Ishtoa robot, targeting what appeared to be its weakest point, the central command cabin. Round after round of firepower slammed into its massive frame, and it seemed to work. One entire side of the machine buckled under the onslaught, but before the collapsing mass could hit the ground, it morphed. With a hiss of compressed metal and a roar of repurposed energy, the damaged side transformed into 3 sleek Ishtoa ships. They launched upward in an instant, moving faster than any human aircraft in the coalition. Within seconds, they had surrounded the warplanes and unleashed a devastating hail of projectiles. The impact echoed off the distant peaks, shaking even the majestic mountains that had stood for millennia. Unlike standard units operated from safe, reinforced command capsules, this mega robot had been entrusted to a single embedded pilot. The reason was latency. In machines this massive, machines capable of shifting form, adapting their structure, and acting as mobile command hubs, every millisecond mattered. Remote signals introduced a delay, imperceptible under normal circumstances, but fatal during split-second battlefield decisions. The pilot inside wasn't just controlling the machine. They were fused to it, body and mind, through a neural interface. Their thoughts guided every transformation, every counterstrike, every tactic in real time. It was a strategic risk and a personal one. The machine was faster, smarter, and deadlier because of that decision. But if it fell, someone inside would fall with it. Several coalition planes were torn from the sky in the chaos. Debris streaked across the clouds like dying comets. But Sebastian and his friends managed to evade the ambush, pulling back in a tight, evasive formation. Then one of the Ishtoa ships locked onto Sebastian. It broke from the trio and gave chase, firing relentlessly, projectiles flashing past his cockpit in white-hot trails. His plane rattled under the pressure. The ground spun below him. The sky narrowed. Just as the enemy ship closed in, a voice broke through the intercom. "Descend now!" Sebastian didn't hesitate. He yanked the controls and dropped altitude. A second warplane screamed into view, cutting across his line of sight like a blade. It fired a missile straight at the pursuing ship. The Ishtoa craft swerved to avoid it, but too late. The missile struck with violent precision, detonating the ship in a blinding burst of flame. Breathing hard, Sebastian scanned his radar. The red dot, his hunter, was gone. "Dane, Adrian, you okay?" he called out. They responded quickly, voices steady but tight. They were alive. Sebastian redirected his flight path toward the warplane that had saved him. As he pulled alongside it, he caught sight of the pilot through the canopy, Emma, one of the fiercest competitors from the world competition. She gave him a thumbs up before banking away into the haze of battle. And just like that, the guilt hit him like a punch to the chest. He remembered the final rounds of the competition, how tight it had been, how close. Everyone had said Emma was the best pilot. He knew it was true, but he had still won. Not because he was better, not because of skill, because of his power. Because he'd whispered into minds, tilted decisions, nudged luck in his favor. Emma had been robbed by him. And yet, she had saved him. The best pilot, the one he stole from. She hadn't hesitated. Why should he? A voice crackled in his headset. "Dane. Sebastian, that formation, we can't win this the old way." His tone was steady, detached, but edged with urgency, analytical under pressure. "The Ishtoas are adapting too fast. Their drones keep finding every gap. The only thing holding steady is that we're losing control." Another voice followed, softer, rawer. "Adrian. There are bodies everywhere, Seb. If this keeps going, there won't be anything left worth saving." Sebastian glanced out across the battlefield. Smoke and fire veiled a graveyard of fallen soldiers. The guilt pressed down on him like gravity. He was here because of his power, and now it felt useless. But then a thought flared in his mind, sharp and sudden. Why do I even think my power is useless now? He clenched the controls harder, jaw tight. Maybe he deserved this guilt. Maybe using his power again, after what he'd done, was the last thing he should do. What if he tilted more than luck this time? What if he crossed a line he couldn't see? We might look different, but we're the same underneath. If I can bend human decisions, why not theirs? They're just people. in different armor. He stared ahead, eyes sharp now. His shame wasn't gone, but something else had risen to stand beside it. Purpose. Sebastian felt invincible again. He dipped his warplane low, gliding behind a ridge of jagged rocks to shield himself from enemy fire. As the engine idled, he closed his eyes and turned inward. The battlefield faded from his vision, replaced by the intricate map forming in his mind. 3 species locked in a brutal clash, chaos unfolding in every direction. He reached out with his thoughts, searching for the minds of the Ishtoas. To his surprise, entry came easily. Their mental architecture was strikingly similar to that of humans, full of reason, yet ruled by emotion. Fear, pride, pain, anger, all present. But as he ventured deeper, trying to influence them, something was wrong. He shouted inside their minds, visualized commands, projected intent, yet none of it reached them. It was like trying to speak across a broken radio. They couldn't hear him, not because they resisted, but because something fundamental was missing. A gap in the circuitry, a silence where response should have been. Frustration surged. He tried everything he knew, shifting tone, rhythm, mental images, but nothing worked. His mental strength was draining fast, and the Ishtoas remained untouched. He exhaled sharply, opened his eyes, and scanned the battlefield. Wreckage, smoke, fire, but he wasn't done. He turned his focus to the Kopats and Koats. Closing his eyes once more, he summoned the memory of what he'd seen. Every detail, every blow, every partnership between Kopat brute force and Koat precision. He reconstructed the war in his mind, like a mental simulation. Then he dove into the minds of the Kopats and the Koats. What he found stunned him. No resistance, no difference. Their minds were just like his, human. Every signal he sent landed. Every attempt to connect took hold. It was as if their brains had been tuned to the same frequency all along. Different bodies, yes, but the same wiring beneath. That was all the proof he needed. With renewed determination, he crafted a new vision. Humans and Kopats fighting side by side, shielding one another, covering each other's blind spots, turning the tide together. He filled that image with hope and urgency, then projected it into every Kopat and Koat he could reach. He imagined the barriers between them dissolving, imagined unity not as a strategy, but as a feeling. Inside their minds, he felt something unexpected, not rage, but hope. Raw, cautious, flickering, but real. He didn't find language. He found instinct, a primal pulse of unity, as if their kind had always been waiting for a call they could finally answer. And then his mind went dark, drained. He sat motionless for several seconds, suspended in quiet. Then he opened his eyes and saw it. The lines on the battlefield had shifted. The Kopats and Koats had turned. They were no longer attacking the humans. They were moving with them, covering them, fighting beside them. He had done it. Sebastian allowed himself a breath of pride, a small, quiet warmth in the middle of hell. The 3 wars had become one. Humans, Kopats, and Koats had joined forces against the Ishtoas. It didn't guarantee victory, but it changed everything. The sudden unity disoriented the Ishtoas. Their perfectly coordinated attacks fell apart. Tactics designed for separate enemies no longer applied. The battlefield had transformed into a blur of allies and adversaries, machines and warriors trading roles with fluidity. The battlefield had changed. So had the war. And deep inside, Sebastian knew. So had he.